All right, folks. Thanks for stopping by. Catch up with us on a Sunday evening here. Been playing around a little bit about and when these live streams are going to be a thing. I really try to probably keep them on Sunday evenings between about 6:30 and 7. I have most certainly entered my busy season already, it seems like. And, sometimes stuff just has to be done and make hay while the sun shines, as they say. So it's good to be here. I'm a little tired. I'm a little windblown today. I'm trying to adapt to being out in a lot of sunshine, relative warmth in the 70s today. And man, it's windy. We're in that season where it's, 20 mile an hour gusts, and it just beats you up. I was out here setting up new fence paddock and just taking care of all the tasks that need to happen here in early spring. So welcome to the first live stream officially of spring 2025. I am so glad it's here. I am never sad to see winter GTFO. Not a fan of it. You guys know it. I grump about it from time to time. So I am happy that we made it through another one, and I can get back to my usual outdoor activities, even if that means getting blown around a little bit. So let me catch you guys up on the latest farm news. Kind of feels like a lot's going on here, a lot of good stuff. Lots of clearing work being done, taking care of overgrowth, brush, invasive stuff, a lot of stuff being cut down, and in the case of my brother, just stuff straight up ripped out of the ground by a bobcat and opened up well enough that we could put the sheep on it to maintain anything that comes back. So plenty more to go. I had a gentleman out a couple of weeks ago to give me a bid on some forestry mulching for the calorie pear thicket. It's 2-3 acres of essentially nothing but calorie pear that needs to go away. It's impenetrable. I've tried it with a saw. It didn't work. Did not work at all. And his quote was more than reasonable. So I just need to get enough capital on hand to be able to take care of what he's going to need to get that done. So it might be, perhaps the end of April before I can afford that, but we're going to make it happen. This will be the year that we're going to make sure that happens. I was in there a few weeks ago, and the thicket tried to drop a few trees with a saw, and it is so thick that there's really no room to even lay a tree down. One tree would get hung in another one. I had no real good way of escaping getting out of the way of a tree coming down, and cut down 3 and decided that I was not going to do that anymore. So forestry mulch is going to be the way to go. We're going to be able to return all that biomass right back to the soil. And while I certainly expect to have stuff re-sprouting in some cases, regular rotation of the sheep through that ought to keep that under control. And with all that biomass breaking down, that means that we'll get all the weedy stuff that comes up, all the weedy, not necessarily grasses at this stage a lot of time, but basically the stuff that the sheep like to eat. So I have a lot of sheep now. I have, I believe the current count is 39, and that happened fast. That blew up, quite literally blew up. So I need to open up more portions of this property to be able to rotate them through. So speaking of sheep, let's see. We had the latest lamb came in about a week and a half ago, if that's right. Angel's the note taker and the bookkeeper and all that stuff, so I'd have to double check. But everybody's doing great. Everybody's obeying the fence. And I have made one small but highly beneficial change to the way I set up these paddocks. It's kind of funny how you get yourself into a routine without ever really thinking about, is this the best way to be doing this? So I guess, again, about a week and a half ago, so only a few days after that newest lamb was born, I really needed to get them moved. I'm not a big fan of moving them when we have babies, but they had to be pulled off this one spot. It was too warm. and there was too high a risk of being exposed to parasites from almost 40 sheep and sheep manure. So they needed to come across the driveway, which normally is not a big deal, but the youngest ones don't really understand what's going on. And of course, the adults and the mamas, they get very excited about moving, and they just kind of leave everybody behind in the dust initially. So we had about 5 or 6 lambs that could not figure out how to get across. Because normally what I do is I just lay down a certain section of fence. I kind of bundle all 3 of the strands together and put them on the ground, and the sheep will just, go over that, and it's not a big deal. But the lambs this was a good thing at the same time, they were afraid of doing that, and so they would not go. And so we ended up having to basically catch lambs one at a time and move them across. So I didn't really want to keep doing that. Now, as they grow, they do figure it out, because we've done 2 moves since then without any real issue, even for the smallest lambs. So after realizing that the whole lines on the ground thing wasn't working, it occurred to me. I said, well, why don't I just make 2 gates? Why don't I just make an in gate, and then when I'm setting up a paddock, anticipate the general area of where we're going to move to next, and set another gate there. So basically, I just have 2 sets of posts side by side, and I run the string. I kind of zigzag the poly wire back and forth between those 2 posts. Do it in the other direction from the other sets of posts, and then I just make a little tail, tie off a tail of poly wire, jump it across so that I have continuity throughout. And then when it's time to move to another location, I open up the out gate, set up a chute if need be, which right now is kind of the case. The way I'm moving them, we're kind of skipping certain sections of property, and I'm making kind of an access lane for them to go down, because I'm just not thrilled about openly having sheep follow me. I still want them corralled. It's just a lot less stressful for me. And so I've done the last 2 paddocks I've done that way with the out gate. I moved them. They've moved twice since then without a hitch. Easy peasy. So, 3 years in, and I figure out something new. So always be learning, right? Always be trying to make things a little bit easier on yourself, a little smoother. And it was one of those things that was like painfully obvious once I looked back at it, but we're good now. So, and frankly, I don't really need to do more than 2 gates. I could, but as it happens, I have 4 reels, and generally speaking, 2 reels make most of the time the size of the paddock that I need. So as long as I have 2 reels in service, I can do the that double gate method. So silly me, but it works. All the lambs look good. Everybody's growing really well. Of course, our earliest lambs came in January, and our latest came a couple of weeks ago. So we do have a pretty extended lamb season. I believe we have 2 yearlings yet to lamb, and they look like they should. Like they look, bred. So I had some folks out a few days ago on Wednesday, and one of the ladies who was out here, who was one of my consulting customers from a couple of years back, is wanting to add yearlings to her land this spring. So I'm starting to think about who's gonna go onto another property. We'll probably just sell. At the rate that I am making sheep here, or that sheep are making more of themselves, I really have no issue selling off 4 or 5 at this stage. Because it wouldn't be a bad thing to drop my stocking numbers for this season, and as I work on getting more land cleared and open and available for them to graze, and by getting more animals from this lineage on a property that is within my community, like 4 miles north of here, that is kind of a form of redundancy, right, on her property. And her forage is essentially the same as what we have out here, so I expect them to do well. I don't really expect them to have any issues adapting. So So yeah, so we've kind of come up with who's going to go, make sure the lambs are weaned before we move any mothers off site, and uh, just kind of take it from there. She wants to start without a ram currently, which there's nothing wrong with. There's nothing wrong with taking a season of just learning how to manage those animals and move those animals without worrying about a ram and lambing and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. In sheep handling news, just the other day, I purchased and had shipped to me a shepherd's crook, which I've probably been needing for some time. But this one is by Premier One, and it's actually designed to get them by the neck and by the leg. So there's a crook on one end and a leg catch on the other end. So I might be able to work on separating and catching sheep by using the distraction of sweet feed and coming up behind them, which is how I normally catch them. If I don't have a trailer here, I put sweet feed down and I just kind of wait till everybody's real focused on having that sweet feed, and I get behind whoever needs to be caught, grab the two back legs, get them on the ground, and then we can, check out whatever we need to check out or load the animal or whatever needs to happen. So I'll be able to give this crook a go. I'll let you know. You guys will be the first to know for sure. I've had a number of presentations and classes lately. Did a presentation for the CHIO group a couple of weeks back on just kind of like a prepping 101. They wanted me to talk about off-grid power, since that's something I'm relatively familiar with at this stage, and kind of like they wanted it presented from an angle of like if you've never prepped at all for anything, but like say, if we have like a grid down scenario from storms, natural disasters, cyber attack, fill in problem there. Some of the 101 for that in 45 minutes. So I think I did all right. And then I had an outline and a checklist laid out because I knew I wouldn't be able to get to absolutely everything that I wanted to cover. So I was able to email that outline and checklist to folks. And it would be mighty nice if one or two of those folks wanted to reach out to me and have me come out and design their properties for some food production. Because it's nice to eat when the stink has hit the fan. So that went really well. Yesterday we had the first time I've done this particular class here on the farm, Abundance Abounds, which covers essentially a permaculture primer. We cover the prime directive, the ethics, and the principles of permaculture. So I would consider it like a decent intro to the concepts to see if, one, just how to make use of these principles and concepts and for your own personal further study and implementation onto your land, or even to see if you want to follow up with like a full-blown PDC in whatever form. And we had a small group here for that, and this is the thing, guys, like it's okay if I just have a few people and not dozens. In fact, I think it's my preference, because I want to convey this material to people who really want to engage with it and who I can connect with, and who's where I can kind of cultivate a more personal connection to, and not just kind of treat this like a numbers game. I'm not interested in that at all. So these folks were great. They're moving on to some family property out of the city before too long. So they were wonderful, and I feel like they were the ideal kind of people to come to a class like this. I was also really happy with how I presented the information. Like I said, I've kind of done this in just like a more consolidated form, but I actually had this class set up to cover about 4 hours. So the first, let's say about 90 minutes is a slides presentation, discussion, and Q&A, and then the rest of it is a site visit here. So we basically walk the property, mainly my zones 1 and 2, and I show what some of these principles look like in action, and kind of demonstrate that, and then just provide more time for the students to ask their questions and get clarification on things, and kind of give me, if they have like a very specific scenario they're trying to work out. So I was just super happy with it. I've got it on the calendar to happen again on May 25th. That's a Sunday. So if you're catching this live stream before then and you're in the Knoxville, Tennessee area, and I would argue like this class is worth an hour or two drive. Like I would drive an hour or two for this class, and then we'd be happy to have you. It's $60. I try to keep things super reasonable and accessible. And if it's something that you're interested in, you feel would be useful to you, and $60 is hard to come up with, don't worry about it. Just email me. Just email me and maybe come an hour early and help me on something around the farm. Like it's not a big deal. It's more important to me to get this information into the hands of people than to make it a giant source of my income. So, but that said, I absolutely think it's worth $60. I absolutely do. So, like I said, I really enjoyed doing that one, and I may see about trying to do it about once a month. I'm kind of going to see how it's, at least this spring plays out. I already feel like my schedule is a little bit packed between being away for the LFTN workshop in April, some other travel I've got planned for consulting and things of that nature. But perhaps this is one that I could pull off, maybe like a midsummer, it's like an early summer, a midsummer, and maybe like an early to mid-fall class. So all the class list is up on the website. Click on classes and events, and everything's up to date. All the foraging classes, all that stuff is up there. Speaking of websites, wet my whistle here. Nicole Sauce is going to help me clean up my my website. That's a bit of a show at the moment. It is not as functional as it could be in desktop form. There's something about the theme that's not being really well supported, and frankly, I just have not had the time, or more so the desire to tinker with it. And so she hollered at me last week, and she was like, "Hey, if you can come out to the holler before the spring workshop and put in a day or a day and a half of just getting the gardens looking good, just kind of doing some food forest maintenance and things," she said, I'll fix whatever needs to be fixed on your website. And I said, you have absolutely got yourself a deal. So hopefully sometime by the end of this month, or early April, which is when I'm planning to go out to the holler, the website will be looking a little bit better, a little more streamlined, and I won't have turn my computer into a frisbee trying to fix things. Let's see what we got else here. We also had the agroforestry class out here a few weeks back. Actually, I had a pretty good sized group. About 12 people came out, and my friend Wynn Miller was out here. We did we did about an hour and a half of some invasive removal on a portion of the south tree line. Mostly a lot of bush honeysuckle and privet coming out, some pear that we cut out. And then we had lunch, had a kind of a learning session about grants that are available for people who want to implement agroforestry on their land and similar kind of silvopasture techniques. And then we got 6 or 7 trees in the ground. We brought some different bare root stuff, some mulberries, some various, I think we put a chestnut oak in there. We put in a silver maple, which I'm very excited about because I love those trees, over here in this nearest western pasture. And we'll be able to, before the sheep are back on that, because they're not going to be on that for a little while, I'll get, of course, a tree protection system put in. So we also got some filming done. My friend Sean did a wonderful job getting some film together for that. So it was a successful day, and I'm glad folks came out here for that. Otherwise, around here, it's just kind of been like a bit of a flurry of seed starting, cuttings being taken and tucked into various grow beds and propagation beds, pruning that needed to happen, maintenance for other systems on other properties where I kind of have like ongoing gigs. mulching and got the rabbits back into their tractor since the grasses and the weeds are all coming up. So I've got rabbits back on the ground again. I don't think the last round of attempted mating resulted in pregnancy. I think I got about 3 more days before that window where they should be beginning to nest. So if I don't see any nesting techniques, I guess we'll make another go. So I'm just not real good at making rabbits. Yeah, still very much on the rabbit learning curve. Sheep just make themselves. Chickens are doing all right. They've been busy doing official chicken business. We're gonna redo that whole chicken structure at some point, but it's not very high on the priority list right now, or doesn't really have much of a budget line at this time. So it's one of those things where, like, if I happen to come across a whole bunch of free or really inexpensive materials to do a large chicken run, then yeah, we'll do it. If it's something I got to save up for, it's just going to wait because the structure that they're in right now is working, and they don't seem to mind. They seem to be fine. So I think I've got you guys more or less caught up on the bulk of the latest farm news. Kind of in a spot where I've got, I've kind of pitched leads, and I've reached out to a lot of people who have expressed interest in my services, and I've kind of just like thrown a lot of stuff out there, and I'm waiting to see what comes back to me. So I'm just kind of patiently, for once, chilling and seeing what comes from that. Just kind of letting the energies do the work, and trying not to have an absolute death grip on not be a control freak. In other words, doing better on that. So let me get over here to my other notes on the screen, and I got to thinking the other day about kind of, let's see, the concept of permaculture combined, or as compared to, contrasted with, kind of the limited human intervention or limited human engagement in nature. So we've kind of got, we've got permaculture, which really encourages the observation, the interaction, following these principles, honoring these ethics, and honoring the prime directive of taking complete personal responsibility. We've got that side of things. We've got that outlook, which, of course, as you guys know, that's what aligns with the way I see things. But there is another side. There's another side, and there's a lot of people who argue for this side, and that is that humans should stay the heck out of at least portions of nature, because they see human intervention as exclusively and inherently destructive and harmful, and it's hard to argue. Like, yeah, absolutely that happens. I argue that that's why we need more permaculture in place, because it can fix what humans have done wrong, instead of ignoring it and staying out of it, where, yes, nature will make every effort to repair itself, but we can have useful, beneficial interventions in that process. So we've got the kind of conservationist and preservationist ideal, and it's hard to argue that humans don't harm the ecosystem, because they most certainly do, and we have certainly since the Industrial Revolution. That's when it's kicked off, but it happened prior to then too. But we also have a lot of evidence of indigenous cultures, even nomadic indigenous cultures, prior to people who kind of stayed and built civilizations in one location, tinkering with things by planting seeds, by transplanting trees, by terra preta, like burying their food scraps and things in the earth, by using fire to knock back certain kinds of understory, certain bits of understory in the forest, opening it up a little bit more, and figuring out that feeds the soil, that it is beneficial in a lot of ways. And you could argue that indigenous cultures just had a better and deeper connection with the natural world, because it was their entire world. These days, it is possible to be, well, I should not to actually be, but to feel completely disconnected. You could lock yourself up in your home, have everything that you would ever want delivered to your door, work from a computer, and as long as the power was on and society was intact, you don't have to step outside. And there are certain people who are that way. If somebody ever wanted to torture me and extract whatever information they wanted, if you locked me in a room without access to nature, I would quickly go crazy. So we certainly have those two extremes. We have these absolute behemoth, metropolis, superstructures, cities that I cannot even conceive of. I don't care for being in these spaces. I've been in big cities. Don't like them. Don't just. It feels very unnatural to me. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to say that people shouldn't live in cities. I mean, if that's what you want to do, by all means. But if we take this more regenerative approach with nature and kind of go for thoughtful and intentional human interaction with these ecosystems, that creates a mutually beneficial relationship, because even though you may be able to isolate yourself, we're still part of nature. The things you eat, the products that you buy were at some point part of nature, and they were, these resources were extracted and refined and turned into the thing that you are using or consuming. With limited engagement, it kind of focuses on setting aside areas of untouched wilderness, which in the United States often looks like national parks or other protected reserves that allow these ecosystems to function without human influence. But that said, well, maybe not so much lately with the way certain budgets for certain entities are being cut, but generally speaking, prior to all that, these state parks, national parks, and things of that nature have staff and have people, have foresters, have naturalists, have people whose role is to look after the systems that are contained within this certain footprint. And, things like budget and staffing and all that, and the decision-making means of those structures determines how much or how little they do. But one thing, like that's not too far in the past that we could kind of use an example. Let's see, this would have been, I'm not really going to get my date right on this, but many years ago, maybe a decade or so ago now, maybe a little bit longer, there were really bad wildfires in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, up, Great Smoky Mountains. And there are rental cabins all over this area. All kinds of tourism-based infrastructure. And a lot of those areas, because they were in the hands of private landowners, they were not, some of these lands weren't part of the National Forest, Cherokee National Forest, and other areas. So there was not a lot of preventative work being done. So there was not like prescriptive fire, clearing out of understory. Like on its own, nature cleans this stuff out quite a bit. But this was kind of prevented because a lot of places they don't want to have prescribed fire too close to a whole cluster of wooden cabins. And then when that fire did kick off, it was a very, very hot, very, very fast moving fire, and it was very devastating. If there had been more management in that area, that might not have been the case. All that said, I wasn't there. I didn't have a dog in the fight at the time, but what I'm saying here is what is anecdotally what I have heard from people who were in that region, who were foresters and folks who knew that this kind of stuff needed to be taking place, this kind of management needed to be taking place, but wasn't taking place. So it still, regardless, had a significant economic impact. if there have been cases of habitat management and even permaculture practitioners allowed to make calls on that, that might not have been so bad. Those fires might not have been so bad. All right, next. The human impact itself. With the limited human engagement viewpoint, they seem to jump to the conclusion that human activity and presence is always disruptive and harmful. Whereas permaculture is trying to design human systems that work with nature and not against it, and kind of comes under the belief that humans can contribute positively when they're applying these appropriate principles and being mindful of things like, personal gain and ego, and really working to study nature from an unbiased viewpoint. Which this was kind of one of the things I was trying to really dig into during my class yesterday, is setting aside as much as possible your assumptions and ego when working with these principles. A couple of my notes here are a little bit redundant, so I'm going to skim through a bit. With ethics and practicality, the ethics of limited engagement really just they prioritize the concept that wilderness is most valuable when humans are not a part of it, like when humans are excluded from it. And permaculture aims for balance of ethical land use, and it acknowledges both the human well-being and the ecological well-being, and includes, of course, sustainable food production and obtaining a yield, and just living in such a way that is more aligned with these natural systems. I mean, to me, it's kind of obvious. To me, it just makes a ton of sense. But there's just a lot of folks out there that just kind of assume that humans just need to get out of nature. It's just all bad. It's never good, and all we're gonna do is mess it up, and we just need to get out. I just don't see it that way. That's not the world I want to live in. However, if we remember our different zones in permaculture, we've got our zones 0 through 5. And guys, I'll catch up on because I can't see your. I'll catch up on the comments here in a minute because I got my notes are on another tab. But anyhow, so holy brain fart. Where was I? Oh, our zones. All right, our zones. Zone 0, you, the individual. Zone 1, the stuff that is, the most intensive, the systems that require the most attention and intensive care nearest to where you spend most of your time. So essentially in your front or backyard. And then we go, if the property allows for it, we go all the way out to Zone 5. And Zone 5 is what we would consider essentially unmanaged or very lightly managed wilderness. So an example of this would be, let's say we've got a big old sycamore tree and the top of it's dying out. Well, we know that tree is housing woodpeckers. There's bugs breaking down that wood. There's all kinds of activity going on in the dead portion of this tree. If this tree is in no danger of, wrecking a structure or harming somebody, we leave the tree alone. In our Zone 5, we can. It's not that we can't be there, but we allow our impact to be very light. Maybe we do some light foraging. Maybe we, gently have a few walking trails, but perhaps it's certainly not something that we're intensively cultivating. We're not clearing it for animal use. We are leaving it as kind of a wildlife corridor, a buffer. And when you look at a lot of the techniques for like hunting habitat management and Zone 5, the Zone 5 within the permaculture zoning, those two things in my mind work together really well. So again, they can work together. They don't. These concepts don't have to be at war with one another. So the similarities being that they recognize the importance of a healthy ecosystem and biodiversity. Um, Both of these concepts acknowledge that damage from industrial agriculture and reckless development. We recognize that those things are harmful, and both advocate for reducing harmful human impacts. Um, Differences being that with permaculture, we're looking to try to integrate humans into nature, while limiting engagement seeks to just exclude and assume that is the solution. Um, Limiting engagement is preservationist, while permaculture is more interventionist, but in a regenerative way. And permaculture sees well-designed human interaction as beneficial, while limiting engagement tends to view human involvement as a net negative, regardless of circumstances. It's like these two concepts have never freaking talked to one another before. So let me get my feet off the desk for a minute. And it's getting dark in here. That's right. So let me catch up with the chat here. All right. Howdy, Pippin. It's good to see you, my friend. The Jeep's been behaving itself, by the way. Oh no, I have a Jeep story. I'll go ahead and tell it real quick, since I think I got the bulk of my diatribe off my chest there. I opened my passenger door the other day, and it wouldn't close. I was on a job. Go figure. And I was looking because it just felt like something was like jammed in the door and it just wouldn't shut. And I could not find anything wrong. The little arm that swivels, not where the hinges are, but there's that little arm in the center. It's got a little pin that goes through it. I think that pin just got into a weird position. So I took a pair of pliers, kind of pulled it up a little bit and jiggled it, and then it was able to shut. And it caught a couple more times, and I told myself, don't open this door anymore on this job. And I opened it again, same thing, and then started using a little bit of excessive force, messed with that pin a little bit more, and it shut. And now I've opened that door a bunch, and it's just as smooth as it's always been. A little bit like clicky and catchy, and now it's just been smooth and better. So I don't know what I did. But I was like, oh great, my passenger door won't shut. And so I was like, well, it's not like people don't take Jeep doors off, so I guess I could do that if I have to. But yeah, that would have been the first time that somebody took a door off an XJ because the door wouldn't shut and he needed to go home. So there you go. Hippocrates Garden is here. It's good to see you. Hope all is well down there in Arkansas. Biochar course. Nice. I've made a little bit. I've tinkered around with it with my little kind of camp wood stove that I've got under the woodshed right now. Played around with it some on some of those cooler days, but we've just been too windy. Even in that little stove, we've just been too windy to risk it around here. We've had rain, but we're also still under a burn ban. It's just too windy and too crispy in some areas. Pippin's right. Zone 5 is what we used to call the back 40. Yeah, even if it's not actually 40, even if it's just an acre, it doesn't really matter. It's important to try to make at least kind of know that you have one. Even at the urban place, I basically had this strip of trees between me and the neighbor to the west, and I didn't do a lot of management in that area, and it was just thick enough that there were ground birds that nested in there. This little corridor for all kinds of critters that I probably couldn't even see. So yeah, even on small properties, I argue that you can create a zone 5, or even if you don't call it a zone 5, you can create little hidey hole habitats and things like that. Pip and I said it was the door catch. Okay, I'll take a closer look. It was one of those times where, like, if I hadn't had any success dealing with it, I would have been out there pulling up YouTube, figuring out why the door won't shut on my XJ. because it felt every bit like somebody had basically like jammed a crowbar into it and wedged it open. It was so strange. Definitely not the first X-ray to have the doors off. That's true. That's true. Uh, I was looking at it. I was looking at the way those hinges are. I was like, I'm pretty sure I have tools with me to pull this off if I need to, because I just don't think I'm gonna be able to drive home with it all the way open. And it was all. And I was thinking it was all the way open, not even a little bit. It would not even shut an inch. So good times there. All right, we got a joke. Let me see if I can figure this. See. Hear about the radio station with the math hour every week. They only played ABBA and Kiss. Oh no, I'm being dense. I don't get it. Math hour? Is that a play on words? Every week, math hour every week. They only played ABBA and Kiss. ABBA. Oh crap, Socrates. I'm sorry. I must be a little too windblown to get that joke. So if you're still hanging out, feel free to drop the explanation because I'm being dense right now. Yeah, guys. So that's what I got for you tonight. That's what I got for you. I promised the dog a walk before the sun was all the way down, so we're gonna take care of that. I already had dinner. Angel made kind of like a Greek salad with ground lamb, which is so good, from one of the lambs that I harvested. It was amazing. It was wonderful. Abacus Chinese calculator. Nice. I'm with you. Abacus. All right. That's a good one. I'll use that one. Just a little dense tonight. Well, thanks guys for hanging out. We'll plan to do it again next Sunday. Holler at me if I can lend you a hand with anything, and we will talk to you next time.